A very good morning to you and welcome to K24 this morning. My name is Mungala Mbuvi, sitting in for Jeff Morte, but like I always say, the conversation will still go on nonetheless. Speaking of which, let's start with the People Daily, which you can get by dialing *550*4#, and for only 10 shillings daily, you will not need any data and no application to read your copy of the People Daily. Speaking of which, let's check out what it says on the front page, and our headline says, State revives PEV cases as leaders protest. It has been 12 years and this case has been revived as they look into the PEV situation that happened during the 2007-2008 post-election. That full story you will get on page 6. As you can see there on the front page, there's a picture that says relatives of Kiamba Church massacre. Among those lined up to record statements over 0708 poll kills, but allies of Deputy President warn police against opening old wounds. Well, that is something that has shocked a lot of Kenyans as to why this story is being revisited now, especially amidst everything that is going on. But you can get the full page, the full story rather, on page 6. And also on page 2, 21 more drinking minors held, 4 charged in city orgy. This has been going on for the last couple of days. A lot of videos being shared online, speculation, of course, going around, and people asking if indeed this is what has been going on under covers. That story is on page 2. You can also check on pages 4 and 5. UK terrorist unwanted at home finishes his jail term. That is the story you will get on page 4 and 5, of course. All right. You can see at the very top there, you've the right to vote no. Raila tells BBI dissenters. Now this sets the tone for our conversation today on K24 this morning. You have the right to vote no. Raila tells BBI dissenters. That story is on page 15. Remember, you can dial *550*4#, and for only 10 shillings daily, you do not need any data, no applications at all for you to get this copy of the People Daily. The next paper, Daily Nation. And this is what the headline says. Is he the hunted man? Is he the hunted man? Full story on page 4. It goes on to say, Deputy President William Ruto predicted in a February interview with NTV that a cabal of powerful political operatives was working to revive the 0708 post-election violence cases, and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations called witnesses to go record statements on the violence, and the Ruto camp is not at all happy. All right, that story on page 4. You can also check out the untold story of Westgate attack, and it goes on to say that on Monday, June 17th, East African Express Flight 803 departed Mogadishu for Nairobi with 532 passengers. One of them was a terrorist. Full story on pages 10 to 11. This is what they have reviewed as far as the Westgate attack is concerned. And on other pages, like on page 3, that you can see on the very top there, family in agony after teen triplets defiled by farmhand, all fall pregnant with twins. Now, this happened in the coastal area where distraught parents welcomed 6 babies from their 3 16-year-old daughters who now face a dreary future. And their defiler is on the run. Full story on page 3. And more stories on page 7, COVID-19 crisis. And Kenyans could pay 327 shillings to get COVID vaccine in proposal. If this indeed is true, and if indeed it happens, good news for Kenyans. And on the very bottom of the front page, Raila shuts door on BBI negotiations. Now, you can see him with a couple of leaders, including Peter Kenneth there, and the full story is on page 5. But the caption says, ODM leader Raila Odinga addresses the media after meeting with the Central Kenya leaders on the next steps in the BBI process yesterday. All right, also sets the tone for our conversation this morning. Moving on to the Standard newspaper, and the headline says, BBI reggae plays on. A while back, we did say that it had been paused, but it looks like it is back in full swing. The speakers are blaring. And the caption there says, again, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga addresses the media after a Building Bridges initiative meeting with Central Kenya leaders in Karen, Nairobi yesterday. The collection of signatures for BBI, which was postponed last week, will now be launched tomorrow. Well, tomorrow is the day that we shall be looking at. And of course, again, it sets the tone for our conversation today. It also says on the front page, Kenya goes for 400 billion Kenya shillings from IMF, the World Bank. Well, should the government get the 2 credit lines, the country's debt would increase by at least 827 billion this financial year. Now, this comes at a time where the country is looking to get a debt relief of about 75.5 billion Kenya shillings. And on page 5, still on the front page, it says that the DCI revisits the past. 12 years later, DCI boss Kinoti fires warning as he reopens probe into 2007-2008 post-election violence cases. All right, get a full story on page 5 of the Standard newspaper. And lastly, on the Star, why Kinoti is reviving Kiambaa murder cases. That is a headline this morning. Full story on page 6. It goes on to say that the DCI chief says 72 murder cases, 44 land displacement cases are under investigation. All right, and on the biggest picture there, the caption, Uhuru Raila to launch signature collection tomorrow. National Assembly Majority Leader Amos Kimunya, former Gatanga MP Peter Kenneth, ODM Leader Raila Odinga, nominated MP Minor Commander Siaya Senator James Orengo, and Senate Majority Whip Irungu Kangata during a meeting at Karen Blixen Coffee Garden, Nairobi yesterday. This is when they did say that indeed if there's anyone who is against the BBI, well, they have the right to vote no. But still on the very front page there, at the very top, page 4 and 5, perilous, desperate health workers recycle PPE in the war against coronavirus. Very sad indeed as we continue to lose more experts in this particular war. Page 2 says police investigating beneficiaries of teenage orgy parties, also something of great concern to Kenyans. How vaccines will reach Kenya in race to contain coronavirus, page 10. And why men are more likely to commit suicide than women, on page 11. And last but not least, NMS real deal, Sonko, a mere drama queen. Quite an interesting caption there. Welcome to the show. This is K24 this morning. Of course, in a short while, I'll be introducing my panel so that we can start the discussion. Karibu tena sana. All right, and welcome back. This is K24 this morning. Introducing my panelists, I shall start with the one in studio. Good morning, Arnold Maliba. He is a public policy analyst. Karibu sana kwenye kipindi.
Good morning, Mbuvi. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I love how you're putting on.
Yeah?
how you're fitting in. I like it.
Asante tena sana.
Asante.
We also have joining us via Skype all the way from the Rift Valley, Justice Minor governance expert. Justice, can you hear me? Karibu tena sana to the show.
Thank you, brother. Good morning, too.
Niko salama sana. Now, I'll start with you, Justice. We are discussing the state of the nation, and a lot is happening. And even from the newspaper that we've just read, we are seeing the orgies that the teenagers are having. COVID-19, we are having doctors dying and other experts that can actually help this country dying. We also have the BBI situation. But from your point of view, maybe you can just give us an overview of the state of the nation from your eyes.
Well, I think the lethal combination of COVID-19 and of course the fact that through the internet you'll have strangers right in the bedrooms of your children, of your teenage daughters, including teenage sons, people you may not know exist, but somehow through the digital platform are interacting through the night with our children. And therefore, the danger lurks with just data and 10 shillings, and you can buy a data, and your son and daughters are connecting with strangers within the country and outside of the country. And getting very strange invitations, very exciting invitations, that to the minds of these young Kenyans, at that age, people, and of course I've been idle for the last, 7-8 months. You can imagine the feeling of adventurism when these young people get connected and invited to very colorful. Sometimes if you see some of these people, the way they have, they co-craft their invitation, and to the mind of the young people, they find themselves invited, and these events from far look appealing. But of course, the events themselves are far from appealing. And of course, the nature of some of these events are very ungodly and unholy. And therefore, I think that is where both the parents will come in, and of course, the government. The government must crack down on these cybercrime, activities going on, and the DCI must also come in very fast. And of course, again, we must also be able as Kenyans to volunteer information and suspicious activities. For someone to be hosting about 44 kids overnight or for 3 days, I think that is a bit disconcerting, and something must be done. And I think it's unfortunate. We also need to invite the church to pray for this nation, because when we are fighting the pandemic of COVID-19, then again we are fighting the pandemic of people want to invade and misuse and abuse our children. That is a disaster that we need to address, and it must be a joint venture between the government, the church, and of course the parents themselves.
Yes. All right, thank you very much for that one. I will introduce our third guest as well. Joy Mdivo. Joy, good morning. Karibu tena sana.
Morning, Bovi.
You've just found us talking about this moral decadence that is going on, but I want us to switch gears now and talk about the COVID-19 situation that has ravaged the country. We are suffering enormously, especially on the economy, as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Care to comment?
It's one of those things that one has to just wonder. 2020, somebody started at the beginning of the year saying, haitaki makasiriko. And we have realized this is 1 year that has tested our patience, our resilience, and just our motivation to keep moving even when things look bleak. And this is a situation now that has brought out so many things. So for example, this is a year when the children have been at home a lot. They have been with their parents a lot. You would have imagined that they would have had the most supervision. But look at what is coming out. Look at what is happening with our economy. So it's a year where I think as a country, let me use this analogy, it's like toothpaste. We have been squeezed as a country, and now what is inside us is coming out. We see financial ruin. We are looking at the situation with our debt. We're looking at the situation with our children. We're looking at the situation with our politics. And so this is a year, I think, where we need to do a lot of reflection. And now coming to COVID, with what has happened through the world, one of the things that I think the world needs to learn, the lesson that we need to learn, is that nobody lives in isolation. There was a time when the last few years, we've seen a lot of protectionism coming across. If you look at the UK, the way the elections were going in the US, there's a lot more right-wing, trying to go back to protecting our borders, protecting ourselves. There was Brexit, there was Make America Great Again. COVID has come to show us, by the way, there's a string that's running through all the societies of the world. And if we do not learn how to live together as global citizens, then what happens in one country may look like it's none of your business, but tomorrow very much becomes your business.
Yes.
So I would, and I've said here before, in our response to COVID, in as much as we are learning from everybody else, this is also an opportunity for us to harness what's in our country.
Right.
Our technology, our brains. We've got some of the sharpest people working on it. And I think one of the media houses carried a feature about the guys at Cambridge and the research that they're doing based on what they know about pneumonia and other respiratory diseases in trying to get a Kenyan solution, a Kenyan vaccine or regimen that works with COVID here.
Right.
Now, those are the stories that we need to start amplifying, because we've had a lot of the good, the bad, the ugly with COVID. It's time we also start looking at the stories that have, how has this changed us? And just to weigh in on what Justice was talking about, as a parent, I think it's also an opportunity for us to find out, do we really have the tools to discipline our children, or have we been relying on the teachers too much to guide our teenagers? Because, I mean, if your child was behaving like this and other parents were advising you, they'd be like, look for the strictest Catholic school in Western, and send that child there.
Are they found in Western?
Many of them are found in Western.
Are they found
in concentration camps?
A lot of them.
Yes. They're the strictest,
Yes.
But there's something Joy has mentioned here. Nobody lives in isolation. I find that very interesting, because in the beginning of COVID-19, we were told, everyone stay at home. If you don't need to go to town, don't even get out of your house. Do you believe that might have been the genesis of the problems that we're facing economically? Because COVID-19 did force us into this situation.
Well, that was given that the pandemic that was COVID-19 was definitely going to ruin the economy, because our productivity went to bare minimum in some cases. It actually went negative because people lost jobs. So as we speak, by the way, in the last quarter, I need to repeat this, in the last quarter, the KNBS data shows that the economy grew by negative 5.7. Negative means that we literally didn't grow. We lost even, as in, even if it was just a rev, we lost, as in the engine switched off and it's now cold. So there's just so much that has happened this year. But even if there was no COVID-19, there will still be other challenges that were already on our neck. Like you have clearly said, we've had a number of issues. Besides COVID, the pandemic that is COVID, our economy is in doldrums, totally in shambles. Nothing is working, even as we try to put up. One of those things that really makes the economy look like it's not doing very bad is because people are staying at home. We are using the bare minimum of what we will do. And then there's the handshake that is keeping us busy. That is another thing, of course. So BBI has also come with its own problems and challenges. Then there is that question that is not really going away, the succession politics around President Uhuru Kenyatta. Will he go or will he stay? And there's so much around that. Now, the nation is also getting into an interesting spin where we now have got the post-election violence stories being revived afresh. And the national debt is there. Soon, I'm told that in probably a year or so, we should be paying at least, we should be in a position where we are required to pay almost 1 trillion shillings. Yes. When we are raising in revenue about 1.2 trillion shillings. So literally it means that we are going back to pre-202 situation, just before Kibaki came in. It's not really a good place to be. Yes. So, and of course there's then now out of, they say what will go wrong will always go wrong. Then out of COVID and the situation that we are in, then there's the rogue, quote-unquote, rogue children. Children going rogue everywhere, but just speaks to our tendency to outsource everything. Yes. Even parentage has been outsourced, where it's about teachers, and we speak very negatively about them, especially before they were allowed to stay with us. Now I'm so sure that when children go back to school, as parents, we should be in a position to appreciate what teachers do and the role that school really plays, because it looks like children have just, parents are no longer in control. Few cases few cases that are being reported, those are just few that are actually being reported. And that could be, that is, in many cases, that is like an iceberg. What you see on top here is just a tip. Down here, there is much more rot going on. So I think, as it's been a basketful or a mouthful, I don't know whether you say a plateful or anything. It's been quite a mixture of stuff. And I think there's been grace to go with that. But that thing that really worries me a lot is actually the upsurge of the COVID numbers. Yes. And now how we have normalized those deaths. Now we report them just as a passing concern until it gets closer or until it gets to yourself. But the more we normalize it, the more we drop the guard. And that is not a good thing.
All right, let's take a look at our question of the day as you interact with us on that one. Please let us know your thoughts on what crucial areas of your livelihood have been adversely affected in 2020. What crucial areas of your livelihood have been adversely affected in 2020? Is it your socioeconomic status or something else? Let us know, and we shall definitely sample them as we move on. Justus, I want to ask you a question, because this one has been brought about by what Arnold said. And he said that our leaders are now focusing on other issues, succession politics and so on and so forth. Do you think that they have focused so much on who's going to be what when it comes to 2022 that now everything else has been abandoned? And that is why probably the economy is also suffering?
It's very interesting that as a country, we're even debating between, looking for funds to take care of the COVID-19 patients and money for BBI. And if you can hear some mandarins within the echelons of power, you can see the shift of their interest, that for them, they would rather look for funds and money to take care of the BBI campaigns and referendum, as opposed to, finding money and even bailing out NHIF to be able to pay for the COVID-19 patients. If as a country, the dichotomy and the debate is which one comes first, then I think there is a moral decadence. If there was a moral disability, I know there is physical disability, but I think as a country, we suffer from a very acute moral disability. That as a country today, we have no problem looking and sourcing for funds to do campaigns and facilitate a referendum to change the constitution. Remember, Mbuvi, if we don't change the constitution, nobody will die.
Yes.
So if we don't find money to change and amend the constitution, nobody will end up in hospital because we are not changing the constitution.
Okay.
But definitely, if we don't look for funds and money to ensure that we have ventilators, we have, an elaborate transport systems, ambulances that may be able to, deliver patients to hospital on time, that we have, nurses and medical doctors who are properly enumerated and trained and paid promptly. So to me,
yes,
that we can't find a balance and the right balance in between as a country prioritizing COVID-19. And remember, most of the countries, if there's in Britain, there's something called NHS, and most of the time you hear and in the news they're talking of enhancing NHS to take care of almost everybody in the country when it comes to paying the bills for the COVID-19 patients.
Right.
In our country, I think we're almost committing murder. The NHS is walking away from our patients. And I'm saying of course, there are so many people in this country without the facilitation of NHIF will not even get medical attention. So to me, yes, I agree that we are obsessed with 2022. Some of these leaders, some of the leaders who are obsessed with 2022, God forbid, may not even be there in 2022 because of the ravaging COVID-19. So I wish we would, as much as we are singing BBI, but I would wish, honestly, that we would find some time to really refocus on COVID-19 and find resources to ensure that the instruments that are necessary to ensure that we combat COVID-19 and ensure that the patients get proper attention and their bills paid by NHIF, then we as a country, we would be able to stand one day and say there was an enemy that visited us in the name of COVID-19, but we stood, we fought. But today, as my brother is saying, today the numbers, we are just giving numbers of 2024 and saying we lost 24 patients to COVID-19 yesterday. And finally, if there is a fight that we are fighting today, if there is a war, it is a war with COVID-19. I see a lot of people talking about amending the constitution so that we don't fight in 2022. If there is a fight at hand, it is the fight against COVID-19. If there are deaths at hand, it is deaths as a result of COVID-19.
Thank you. Justus, I'll get back to you shortly. Joy, there's also another conversation that has been brought about in regards to Kenya borrowing money. The government is borrowing money left, right, and center from Europe and other places, and yet we have rising unemployment. Are we even able to collect the taxes that we will need to collect so that we can pay this debt?
I think initially projections were 1.6 trillion we're supposed to collect, and then Arnold just set me straight here that what we're actually getting in is about 1.2 trillion. That tells you we're not even collecting enough to be able to comfortably service the debt. We've got to a place where before we had very comfortable ratings internationally in terms of our credit worthiness, but now all the major indicators are that Kenya is actually in danger of defaulting on her debt. That being the case, then several things come into play. So the first thing is the value of the shilling falls. When the value of the shilling falls, everything becomes more expensive because, again, we import quite a lot of what we use in this country. So the conversation is not just about even our borrowing appetite, is in our oversight organizations that are supposed to keep this in check. Parliament has repeatedly been pushing up our borrowing ceiling despite all indications that yes, we may be needing to get in more money, but we have to do more about how we spend what we already have. Fiscal prudence is something that as a country we don't really have. We have excesses that surely cannot even be explained. Yesterday I was listening to C.S. Matiang'i on another media house and was talking about we have gotten to a place where we may have to look at salaries and allowances. And I'm looking at it as a lawyer, you know, in labor law, you don't ever revise people's salaries downwards. You know,
this is for civil servants?
Yes, this is for civil servants. You know, you can tell them, you know what, you can take a 20% pay cut for a little bit while the company is in turbulence, but their salary remains the same. And that's like a debt to the company they need to pay back later. So if civil society is talking about revising them downwards, what it's telling me that there must be major retrenchment coming because you can only hire new people on the lower salaries. The ones who are there, where they are, you cannot move them. So it's either you're getting them out of the way. So when you listen to all these conversations, it goes back to the question. The people at Treasury, the people at the Ministry of Finance, the people in Parliament, the Budget Committee, and the other committees that deal with our finances. Kenya is a wasteful economy. It's not like we are completely poor, but what we do have, we do not spend the way we are supposed to. And then the appetite for borrowing to deal with our problems. I mean, we see it with Kenyans, with Fuliza and Tala and Okash and all these other things. I mean, we have perfected the art of borrowing for Peter to pay Paul.
Yes.
And as a nation, we cannot continue like that because there will come a time when we will need some funds for something, and that will be unavailable. So, for example, in the last few years, we have seen Kenya has had an appetite for more commercial loans rather than long-term concessional loans that would be easier to pay and would have lower interest rates. Now, commercial loans are good because they come quickly, no conditionalities, and you can implement a project. Tomorrow people can see something working on the ground. But on the converse now, what happens is when those loans fall due, there is no negotiating. There's no wriggle room. You have to pay up. And so we are in a situation right now as a country. Those who are in the know about what's happening with the finances will tell you. The lack of money in the counties is not because the law was not passed, it's not because DORA delayed, it's because actually the coffers might be running empty. So there is need for re-evaluation. But I will hammer this point one more time. Our National Assembly is the oversight that is supposed to look at what is happening in the executive, in the ministry of, in the finance docket. They let us down repeatedly. The National Assembly as a body, when they allow debate to come in and they keep raising the debt ceiling. Like this current one, we're being told we're going to hit that debt ceiling maybe 2025. It's already 2020, and we're looking at maybe by next year we'll have already hit the 9 trillion debt mark.
And that scares me.
That tells me the guys are supposed to be keeping an eye on our money and not doing their job. And so there is need to not just recalibrate how we spend, but even those charged with oversight need to do their job. Or if not, they should be the first ones who should have their pay cut.
All right.
And their funding rescinded.
Okay, so we want to take a short break right now, but as we do that, page 15 of the People Daily says, you have the right to vote no. Raila tells BBI dissenters. Do grab your copy right now by dialing *550*4#, and for only 10 shillings, let's have that conversation in about 2 minutes. When we return, do not go too far. We'll be right back.